It is all the news all the time, and my name, as always, is Adam. Yeah, and it's lovely to have you back. And we've got a very interesting story today coming from the Telegraph, which is quite a broadsheet, quite an intelligent newspaper in the UK. And what they're saying is most children who think they're transgender are actually just going through a phase. But this isn't just anybody. This is the NHS England organisation itself. This is a very serious and legitimate evidence-based organisation. The NHS, they don't mess around. They're not selling snake oil and powdered grass to people. So what they're saying doctors are going to be told, the consultation finishes in 6 weeks, but there's an interim statement which has come out already, and they're saying doctors are told not to encourage young people to change their names and pronouns, and certainly not to transgender, because they believe most children who believe that they are transgender are just going through a phase. And this is the NHS has said, as it warns that doctors should not encourage them to change their names and pronouns. So a radical departure from the previous advice that was given, and has been the predominant direction of travel for the last 10 years. They're saying here, NHS England has announced plans for tightening controls on the treatment of under 18s who may be questioning their gender. This includes a complete ban on prescribing puberty blockers outside of strict clinical trials. So these young people won't be able to get puberty blockers unless they're in a strict clinical trial, and those things are very serious. They're not casual things at all. The services, which will replace the controversial Tavistock clinic, I'll show you the picture of their sign here, will be led by medical doctors rather than therapists. I mean, I can't believe it wasn't that way already. I'm discombobulated. It should have been medical doctors from the beginning, should it not? Therapists. And will consider the impact of other conditions such as autism and mental health issues. There's a comment from one woman on the Mum's Net, which I'll show you in a bit, but I feel like sort of face palming and saying, well, of course it is. These things, it's just insane. The plans, which are currently under public consultation, are for an interim service, which is in place now for young people with gender dysphoria, whilst the review, which is being done by Dr. Hilary Cass, continues into the treatment offered by the NHS. They note that there is a need to change the services because there's currently scarce, inconclusive evidence to support clinical decision making. That's because it comes from therapists. NHS England says that the interim Cass report has advised that even social transition, such as changing a young person's name and pronouns or the way that they dress, is not a neutral act. It's not a risk-free or an incident-free act, and it will or could have significant effects in terms of psychological functioning. So it's very wise not to change a person's name or pronoun if they're under 18, because there's a great chance that they're just transitioning in a phase, and they'll come out of that phase. And if you give them hardcore chemicals that change their bodies forever, fundamentally, or you change even just how they call themselves and the pronouns they use, you can have great psychological effect on them, and not in a positive way. Parents groups and professionals have long raised concerns that NHS medics have taken an affirmative approach to treating children, including using their preferred names and pronouns even when the parents are against it, because of this ideological direction of travel that's been going on for the last 20 years. So what they're saying is be mindful of the transient phase. The proposals say that the new clinical approach will, for younger children, reflect evidence. This is NHS England, they are very evidence-based. It will reflect evidence that in most cases, gender incongruence does not persist into adolescence. And doctors should be mindful that this might be a transient phase. Instead of encouraging transition, medics should take a watchful approach to see how a young person's condition develops, the plan state. This is a huge turnaround, absolutely a complete 180 going in the other direction, and I can imagine that the blue-haired Twitter users are up in arms about this. But this is evidence-based. This is, as we're so fond of saying, this is following the science. And if it is a transitional phase, and you do such things to these children, or you condone it, or you encourage it, or you push them in that direction, whether you do it out of a feeling of solidarity with them, or you feel it's a really good direction, it's not. It really isn't. It's a dangerous pathway that can cause psychological damage over a very long time. So you're very, very dangerous. For adolescents, social transition will only be considered when it's necessary, preventing clinically significant distress, and when a young person is able to fully comprehend the implications of affirming a social transition. So there's going to be a very much a sort of pressure not to do this. It should be on the doctors to really push this idea that it's a bad idea and that it is a transitory phase, and they will, to put it simply, they will grow out of it. And doing drastic things when they are much younger is very, very risky and should not be done at all. It adds that before medics change a young person's name and pronouns, a teenager should have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. This is very vague, though, gender dysphoria. The public consultation documents say that change is necessary against a backdrop of sharp rise in referrals to the Gender Identity Service, known as GIS, from just under 250 in 2011-12 to 5,000 last year. So something's going on. And if you've got 5,000 children are being persuaded that they're not in the right bodies, and really most of them would have you come through it like a phase, you're damaging a huge number of children for a long period of time. In recent years, there's also been a spike with the number of referrals, currently at 8.7 per 100,000 population, compared to 4 per 100,000 in 2021 and 4.5 in 2019 to 20. So it's a spike that's going up. So the Tavistock has closed. The Health Service first announced in July it will be closing the Tavistock Centre, replacing it with 2 regional centres. Yeah, because it wants to be able to control who is actually giving this advice. And ideologically driven therapists have to be dismissed. The move is aimed at taking a more holistic approach, which means overall and all-encompassing approach rather than ideologically to treating children and looking at the reasons why they're questioning their gender. So it's expected the regional centres will be operating by spring, and long-term plans for the gender identity services for under 18's, based on the final recommendation, will come into effect in 23-24. So there you go. It's very, very different from the direction of travel for a long period. Rather than being delivered by therapists and hormone specialists with agendas and boxes to tick and quotas to fill, the new clinical teams will include experts in pediatric medicine, autism, neurodisability and mental health. Why weren't they in place in the first place? Is bizarre. Why is it run by blue-haired Twitter fanatics? Shocking. It's just insane, all this system. The proposals note that a significant proportion of children who are referred for treatment have neurodevelopmental issues or a family of social problems. Wow. And then they have this transitional phase where they try and work through these issues caused by this, but it's nothing to do with gender. The new treatment teams will be led by medical doctors. Brilliant. Thanks. And the service will only take referrals from GPs and other NHS professionals. See, suddenly we've got it back on a professional footing with proper legitimate medical professionals. NHS England will also strongly discourage young people from buying hormones from private clinicians and will not accept clinical responsibility for the treatment of those who have done so. Ooh, that could go horribly wrong. Buying stuff off the internet. Good luck with that. The consultation on the plans closes in December, so in about 6 weeks' time. So it's a huge change, absolute 180. A juggernaut has turned I'm thinking of a tanker in the sea, gigantic tanker, is now heading in the opposite direction where it was going. So yeah, massive change. This is the Tavistock Centre, now closed. Some interesting articles from Mumsnet by parents for parents. And what are they saying? I bet they're overjoyed. Most children who think they're transgender are just going through a phase, says the NHS. Yeah, this is the NHS. It's a serious organisation. You would not believe how much money the NHS can go through in a year. I think it's over £90 billion, £100 billion, $100 billion they burn through a year, the NHS. It's a huge operation. But anyway, this is the Telegraph article that we just looked at. But they're saying doctors told not to encourage young people to change their names and pronouns, and definitely not to have any form of surgery or any chemicals or anything. I can't read the whole article because I'm not subscribed. We just did though. It looks positive. It is very positive. Jellysaurus, exactly so. I mean, it's just blatantly obvious. And still we rise fancy that. I know. It's sobriquet. Yeah. We have been saying this for years, but no one listens. They all say, oh, he's some sort of neo-fascist or something. How dare you not? How dare you question the idea that it's not a phase? Yeah. Because I know kids that were like 14, they wanted to be a space rocket, like literally the rocket, not the spaceman. They wanted to be the rocket. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. But, and now he's working as a mechanic. So maybe he's right. Maybe he could be a rocket. This is from Transgender Trend. What are they saying? Public consultation, interim service specification. So it's in place now, and it's taken over the Tavistock Centre, but the consultation will end in 6 weeks. So this interim service for specialist gender dysphoria, services for children and young people is now in place. We welcome, they say, the new interim service specification released by NHS England for the regional gender services that will replace the Tavistock nightmare of gender identity development service next year. This is a massive departure from the previous NHS service specification. Gone is the ideological language, replaced by proper clinical considerations. That is all we wanted, really, to be honest, and a normal standard of care consistent with other child and adolescent services. That's what we campaigned for. I mean, it seems very simple and straightforward, but ideological fanatics have pushed it in such a hard direction. Based on the report by Dr. Hilary Cass, the new NHS service specification will cover the changeover period and provide support for current GIDS patients, which is gender dysphoria or something, and those on the waiting list. There's public consultation going on now. Phase 1 periods are here. The previous versions of this specification were heavily influenced by the transgender lobby groups such as GIRES, along with the WPATH, it looks like Warpath, standards of care reflected in the ideological language and concepts which pepper the specification. It's always really dangerous when you have ideology instead of science, when you rely on essentially belief systems rather than science. The new version moves the service back to where it belongs, within child and adolescent, paediatric and mental health services. I mean, this is where it should be. So it's a huge change. It's massive news that things are, in my personal opinion, things are going in the right direction for once, and in a more rational direction. I've got some other news. Water is wet. This is water is wet in the sense of being a liquid that flows easily because its viscosity is low, which is because its molecules are rather loosely joined together. So that's also news for us. Water is actually wet. And I was looking up here, 2 + 2 = 4. We've got some delightful proof here that 2 + 2 = 4. So all these things are good. So let me know your thoughts, your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions. And is it just a phase? Yes, it is just a phase. It always was. Is this the direction of travel for not just the UK, but for other countries that have all jumped on the juggernaut of ideology? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I try and read them. I try and sort of understand what's going on and see where we are in terms of like an organisation and sort of where we're thinking. And like and subscribe. And I'll probably get attacked by the trans lobby because they're fanatics. And I will see you guys later.